It is March 31st. It's about 1:03 p.m. And this is a collective bargaining between the firefighters and the city of Laredo. I know that we scheduled this shorter meeting than usual so that we can just have a presentation by the union. It's concerning Article 15, if I'm not mistaken. Is that correct?
15 and 30.
15 and 30. Okay, thank you very much. So I guess we'll just devote the vast majority of this session to that and to answer to any questions, stuff like that. Okay. So whenever you all want to begin, go ahead. CD? Yes, sir.
Of course. We're gonna put up a presentation on the. Yeah. You wanna put play? Oh.
No, it's
That's too sad. It's a slideshow. We're just firefighters.
No pun intended.
We're gonna listen to 30-minute video.
Sorry, buddy.
I'm not that. I'm not that technical.
The blinds is what it is. Yeah, the blinds, both the blinds.
From beginning. Awesome.
There you go.
We're gonna pass these out. It's just, as you can't see the screen, we got some really nice binded ones, but we weren't able to get all of them binded, so.
It's all right, buddy. Don't worry
It
about
didn't
it.
get done in
Here you
time.
go.
Didn't get done in time.
No worries, no worries. Miss Linda, here you go.
We got some right
Thank
here.
you. There you go. Appreciate it. You got it. I got this. You got it. Thank you. Presentation. See you later. Okay.
No skipping ahead yet. Don't open the books until we vote. Like taking the cat test.
I would hate-
It's like a test,
You may
right?
begin.
Yes, I would hate to spoil the surprise at the end, okay? Okay, go ahead.
Should be a surprise.
Here you go.
So good afternoon. We'd like to start our presentation with going over the collective bargaining process. You can go to the next slide. Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 174, which in regards to Fire and Police Employees Relations Act, governs the collective bargaining process. We'd like to highlight some of the things to educate everybody that's not a lawyer in this table, or listening from home. So if you can go to the next slide. Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 174.002A. The policy of this state is that a political subdivision shall provide its firefighters and police officers with compensation and other conditions of employment that are substantially the same as compensation and conditions of employment prevailing in the comparable private sector employment.
Okay, so here basically our Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 174, is pretty much what governs us and gives us the right to collective bargaining. As far as substantially in this instance, it means really close, real, and solid. And as far as compensation, that is defined by our certification pay, our assignment pay, our longevity pay, and base pay based on ranks.
Go to the next slide. So practical application and negotiation process. The three main categories of negotiation are compensation, otherwise referred to as wages and salary, and including supplemental pays, paid time off benefits such as holiday pay, vacation leave, sick leave, bereavement leave, etc. Other benefits such as insurance coverage, retirement tools, and equipment. Next slide. So what qualifies as compensation, as Mr. Chapa here mentioned earlier, longevity or seniority pay, education pay, assignment pay, certification pay, shift differential pay, fitness incentive pay, field officer training pay, step-up pay, not the same as assignment pay, and other categories negotiated in bargaining process, such as pension contributions. We'll go to the next slide. What else comprises conditions of employment? depends on your role, but generally it would include things such as hours of work, overtime policy, time and grade requirements, staffing and minimum manning, transfers and shift exchanges, misconduct investigations and disciplinary policy and practice, personnel file management, departmental and civil service. Now we're gonna go with chapter 174.002B. The policy of the state is that firefighters and police officers, like employees in the private sector, should have the right to organize for collective bargaining, as collective bargaining is a fair and practical method for determining compensation and other conditions of employment. Denying firefighters and police officers the right to organize and bargain collectively will lead to strife and unrest, consequently injuring the health, safety, and welfare of the public. So this is basically highlighting that we can collectively bargain and we can compare to other fire departments in the state that do similar services as ours. Just one thing that we want to point out is in the private sector, we're not going to compare ourselves to the private sector. We feel that that would be unfair to the city and the citizens of Laredo, just because of the wages and the compensation that the private sector is receiving currently. So we're going to exclude that. But if you'd like that information, we'd be more than happy to provide that later on.
Currently, our guys are not per se leaving in the middle of their career for another job, but this year alone, we saw at least 5 of our individuals retire pretty much as soon as they could, because they've gone on to work in the private sector. And, they left right at 20 years of service when they could reach the retirement age. Some even left at an earlier age than the normal retirement age of 50, because the private entities are paying so much higher than public entities.
Let me interrupt you for a second. We just found out from our members that the slides are not coming out on the video.
Take a time out.
I didn't mean to interrupt you. I
Sure.
apologize. It's just people are texting in that they can't see it.
No worries.
On this way, right?
Mhm.
No. I was looking at it. I have the same.
On Zoom. Um, I can't see it because it's steaming. Okay. Did it work? Okay, good.
Move this, they're gonna move the, I guess, the green portion of it.
Sorry?
It comes out.
Oh,
Oh,
very good. Ready to
Good to go?
resume?
All right.
Okay. So Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 174.002C. The health, safety, and welfare of the public demands that strikes, lockouts, and work stoppages and slowdowns of firefighters and police officers be prohibited. And therefore, it is the state's duty to make available reasonable alternatives to strike by firefighters and police officers.
We're on the wrong side.
No, yeah, it's letter C.
Let's see.
Right there, that
Thank
one.
you.
Okay, so here, us not having the right, and basically by ruling or an opinion from the Supreme Court, we are not allowed to strike, and also by state statute, it prevents us from striking. And also we address this in our Article 33 of our CBA. We have this as well, that, our firefighters do not want to strike, and we're prohibited, so we do have to find alternative methods, which is our collective bargaining table, as well as our arbitration.
So here on 174.002D, because of the essential and emergency nature of the public service performed by firefighters and police officers, a reasonable alternative to strikes is a system of arbitration conducted under adequate legislative standards. Another reasonable alternative, if the parties fail to agree to arbitrate, is judicial enforcement of the requirements of this chapter regarding compensation and conditions of employment applicable to firefighters and police officers. Basically, it's just reiterating that if we fail to come to an agreement, go arbitration. If the arbitrator can fail, if they fail to arbitrate, they can rule a judicial enforcement of whatever the party's compensation and conditions of employment results from. Next slide. With the right to strike prohibited, to maintain the high morale of firefighters and police officers and the efficient operation of the departments in which they serve, alternative procedures must be expeditious, effective, and binding. So this just goes back to Article 33. So in this next article, in the next chart, sorry, this next slide, we'll see a chart. So this chart, basically with the theme of 174, it basically states that we can compare ourselves to other cities in the state in regards to compensation, wages, and conditions of employment. We wanted to get cities that more or less had similarities, mainly in services, but we also looked at population, full-time employees, square mileage coverage. So most of the cities that you see there are within our range, you could say. We do have two outliers on the higher end and two outliers on the lower end, being the higher end being Fort Worth and Austin, and the lower end being Georgetown and Baytown. So that's for the aspects of population. FTEs, we try to do the same thing, try to get fire departments similar in the services they have, and address that by identifying the amount of full-time employees that is contractually obligated to be budgeted for, right? Right now, we're not at 407, but in the contract, our maximum full-time employees is 407, right?
And this is slide number what?
This is slide,
That's fine.
It's
I know.
numbers right there on the screen.
And
11.
slide 11, no, just so I'm clear. I don't want to mess with your presentation. Do you want to take questions at the end of it?
No?
We can take questions
take
during,
questions, go ahead.
or maybe at the end of each slide. I don't know what.
Yeah, I guess when you're done, then I
We'll wait,
guess,
we'll wait.
we'll wait. Okay, that's fine.
Okay, whatever is fine with you guys.
Thank you, guys.
So you might ask why certain FTEs are higher or lower in certain areas. It all has to do with the response times. So Laredo has a pretty big square mileage coverage. So the response times have to be adequate per coverage, right? And that's the difference in the FTEs versus square miles that you see there. And then going to the things that we really wanted to focus on are certifications, capabilities, things that are incentivized, paid, or things that the department have that can be able to provide for the city, right? In their respective department. So Chapa, can you take it from there?
Sure. So at first column, EMS. And this column is just referring whether they're fire-based EMS or they're just fire departments that have no fire service or contracted out to someone else. In the second column, it shows who has paramedics. Okay, so most departments do have paramedics. but we do have some that do not, right? And that's what that column's explaining, that certification and that service that is offered to their community based out of their fire department. Not necessarily that they don't offer it, they might have contracted out to some other entity. We're just looking at what fire and EMS-based fire departments or what they carry in that capacity.
So for the next one is bilingual. Most of these cities do have bilingual incentives, bilingual qualifications. Here, the Laredo Fire Association is not asking for it. That's why we have a little sad face. Just a little joke. But we just wanted to show that, most of our fire department is bilingual. We're not asking for compensation, just wanted to point that out, that these cities do compensate or incentivize their members, or their firefighters, sorry, to get bilingually certified. I know there's entities in Laredo that do offer that service, like CVP, teachers, but we're not asking for incentives, we just wanted to point that out.
Okay, hazmat technician, this is another incentive, another assignment pay or certification pay that these other communities pay for their firefighters to have this certification. So those have those check marks, the ones that incentivize by some sort of an incentive pay to be hazmat tech. And then we have ARF, we have our airport rescue firefighters. These, as well as the cities, only 3 other cities besides Laredo Fire Department has this. As you can really see across this table, other than bilingual, we have these certifications and we offer, but unfortunately we only offer incentive pay for 2 out of these 10 that are listed here.
Which one, I'm sorry? I'm sorry.
So all
I
these
didn't know what you
are, all
said.
these are certification pays, yeah, ad pays.
So I think the point, he was, when we set out to look for this, we weren't looking just for highest paid cities, that wasn't the goal. We were trying to find comparable cities. So the number one thing we're looking at comparison was services rendered. Besides services rendered, then we tried to find populations that were similar, we tried to find geographic square mileage that were similar. We're trying to compare as close as we could, apples to apples. That's what we were trying to do.
Next, another certification that we have are inspectors, which building are building inspectors. We have that division along with the arson investigator division. We also pay an incentive for our three arson investigators plus our fire marshal.
So then we also have our rescue team, because our rescue team covers things like high-angle rescue, swiftwater rescue, confined space, building collapse, boat operations, things like that. So our rescue team, while a few of the other departments have it, that's kind of one of our specialties. Instructors, yes, we have 2 different certified academies that, that come up at the end. We have our in-house fire academy, we have our in-house EMS program. We have instructors for both of those, obviously, and there's assignment pays for those, but then there's also the department has started an initiative making all of our officers and our drivers both instructors and also certified pump operators. So what we're seeing now is not only do y'all have instructors at the academies, but now you have across the board over 100 instructors on the line, closer to 200 instructors on the line. And those, in most cases, those are services that are being rendered that aren't being paid for. Because we max out at the 2, most of our guys that are instructors are not being paid to be instructors. Then, of course, like I mentioned, you have the Fire Academy and the EMS Academy. Very hard. Most departments do not do in-house training. One of the main reasons we do in-house training is because we're so isolated. It's very expensive to send people out of town for training. When you're talking, months long academy, it's very expensive. So a lot of companies or a lot of departments will send their people to teach Tarrant County, company or private entities that will instruct their cadets. Laredo just doesn't, it's not afforded that opportunity because of its isolation. Just puts us in a situation where we have to do a lot of things on our own here.
All right, the next couple of slides that will be coming up, it will be showing our base pay as we go through our steps, as well as our incentive pays and how they compare to these 12 cities here. And here we start with our firefighter base pay. This is firefighter year 1. This is the day basically you get hired as a firefighter. This is what the starting salary for all incoming firefighters in all 12 cities. This is their starting pay. As you can see here, we are in about sixth place on the list of 12 cities, okay? So I think here we're comparable to all the other cities on our first year of pay. And here it is, our next step. And we chose year 3, we didn't show year 2 because year 3, that's where Laredo firefighters, we max out. At year 3, as a firefighter, that is our max base pay that we will get unless we rank up, we promote up to another position. This is where we max out at our base pay. And at this point, we drop down to 8th place in the 12th city that we have chosen here for this presentation.
Okay.
Okay. Our next slide shows firefighter max base pay. And here what we mean by max pay is basically what other cities might have or compensate them for their experience and their education and their knowledge. Like I said, we stop at year 3 here, we become last place. Most of these other cities average about a 10-step process to get to their max pay. Some are higher, but some are a little lower than 10 years, but 10 years is basically the year across the board where they get to their max at the firefighter level. Like I said, this is not promoting up to a driver, to a captain or anything else. This is just their base pay as a firefighter.
The reason we wanted to choose firefighter as one of them is just because it's pretty across the board universal rank,
It
right?
gets a little,
And it is
gets a little weird with assistant driver, it's like nowhere to be
Yeah.
found, and then battalion
Yeah.
chief, but we use district chief,
Firefighter
yeah.
are similar responsibilities,
Mhm.
similar job functions, and it is the largest base in every department of employees, right? Correct.
Absolutely.
So we also wanted to highlight a firefighter pay with incentives. I know that's a big issue that the city has said, hurts them. We wanted to show basically a firefighter here that, sorry, give me one second. We wanted to show a firefighter that has an associate's that is intermediate certified, is a paramedic, is an ambulance rotation, is bilingual, and is either hazmat, rescue, or ARF certified, right? We talked about it before. There's different incentives for all these categories. Laredo is capped at 2. So we wanted to be as realistic as possible across the board in all these other fire departments and show the difference of what these incentives would get us to after. As you can see, we're still in last place, even with the average of 16% incentives going in Laredo's standard. One of the big things we wanted to highlight was, even if you took off all the incentives from everybody else, we'd only jump up to 11%. To 11th out of the 12 cities here.
And our incentive, we chose 16 for 2 reasons. One is a 10% for a paramedic, and the other incentive would be an intermediate firefighter, and that takes 4 years to get there. So right off the bat, they're not at 16%. Right off the bat, they start at 10, and it takes 4 years to be 4 years of being after certification, getting that certification as firefighter, and that clock starts for them to get 4 years, and then they can qualify for 6% of firefighter certification pay.
Next slide. Here we show the captain base at year 1 of promoting to captain. So for Laredo, it's 95,000. And here we are 11th out of the 12th place in the cities that we've compiled. Just wanted to point out, Austin, they have a different step system, so that's why it reflects 94, but we'll address that as the slides go on. Also, wanted to point out that Fire Arlington and Austin are only fire-based systems, so they do not do EMS. Our captains have the flexibility to do EMS and fire as well. Next slide.
What does it do? I'm sorry.
Fort Worth, Arlington, and Austin. Austin,
They have a separate EMS department.
Travis County EMS. Next
And they're
slide.
kind of unique because the city still compensates their employees, they still pay them. They're just not part of their organization.
second division.
We'll get into it in deep.
Yeah.
So this is captain base pay year 3. This is where the Laredo fire captain maxes out at their step, right? which is year 3 at 36 months. If you look across the board, still 11th place. And these are the rest of the departments where they are at year 3 step. So then we go to the captain's max base pay. As you can see, we're in last. Wanted to point out that the average it takes for these departments to get there is around 5 years. For us, our max is 3. So just so you guys are aware. And same thing goes, we wanted to do the most accurate comparison within our departments by showing you guys incentives, where they bring people up, where they carry over. So the next slide, we took a captain with the max amount of incentives in each department, and this is what we got. Captain being at.
It's max for
Oh,
ourselves.
max for us, yes.
The other cities, we kind of used the same outline that Oscar mentioned earlier as far as the associates and things of that nature, not going to a bachelor's where it pays more. We didn't max them out, but we maxed ourselves out at 20%. Even though, we maxed ourselves out, we only have 100 people out of 400 that are master firefighters. And that's been consistent going back 4 years ago, 2018. We were all around 100, 100, 108. We haven't looked since 40 of our guys retired last year, how many of those that we lost that were master firefighters. Our department this year has become a very, very young department. So I doubt that, I'm sure we're well below 100 on our max certification.
Yeah, I believe y'all said in y'all's presentation that our average incentives are 16 and a half
I thought it was 17.
or 17? Okay, 17%.
17%.
We went above that, went to the full 20%.
Yes.
On these numbers.
So we
For
didn't go
ourselves.
with y'all's average, we went with the max,
You
just to
rounded
show
up.
how
Okay.
the disparity, because
We just want to be as realistic and accurate as possible when we compare, fire department to fire department, rank to rank.
so even at that, even if you took all of the incentives off, like we end up, what, number 3?
No.
2 or 3?
As accurate as what, as you said?
Excuse me?
As accurate and as what?
Realistic.
All right, so firefighter captain max base pay.
So, yeah,
Yes. The next slide. So here, we just wanted to go over the difference in rank pay. So just kind of highlighting that, one rank isn't astronomically different than the other. It does take 3 promotional cycles to get to your successful promotional cycles.
Yes, sir.
To get to the rank of captain, and most of the departments is the same. So we just wanted to highlight the differences. In base pay is 26.26% in Laredo, and it's pretty consistent across the board when you look at other cities. So the next one is base pay with incentives. So here, the difference did go up slightly, but it is largely due because we did the 16% for firefighters and the 20% for the captains.
but just remember, a firefighter can have max of 20%. So if you have a 10-year firefighter, 12-year firefighter, the max is out at the master level firefighter. We could have put it at 20% for a firefighter, because we do have firefighters that have over 12 years.
Yes.
But to be more consistent and to be more fair with the numbers, we did 16% and 20%. And that's why there's a difference, there's an increase there.
So our next slide over, for the fiscal year of 22 to 23, some of these raises came in October 1st, some of these came in the calendar year, just varies from department to department. But we looked around the state, and these are the confirmed raises that we got from each of these cities. Plano being at 3%, Frisco at 10, Fort Worth at 5, etc. It's there. I just wanted to highlight that since they are higher paid departments, the dollar amount would also be increasingly high. Our proposal is going to be 2.5% for the first year. So we'd like to point out that we heard the city, their constraints, the issues that they brought up, their concerns largely, and we kind of felt that 2.5 would be a fair balance between that.
Austin there doesn't have an amount. They're currently in arbitration.
Yeah.
So. Okay, here, these are the projected cost of salary increases, basically our proposal for this contract. We're proposing a 2.5 to start on June 1st, The reason we picked June 1st, this is what we thought could be realistically possible if we kind of kept meeting the next couple of weeks in April and get this through council in May. So we thought June 1st would be something a little more realistic. We're not asking for any back pay going back to October 1st or anything. We just want to, move forward from this. So we kind of came up with the number of 403, 476. Also, can you explain how we reached this number?
So the way we came up with our projected cost analysis is we got our full-time number of FTEs, 407, right? We got the amount of people per rank, we got their max step, and we got their annual base salary, and we multiplied that times the people in each rank. We also added the 21.1% for the pension that the city contributes, the 1.45% for social security that the city contributes, and we added an average of 16% incentive pay cost as well. So that's how we got our cost.
So this
Right
is
now,
pretty
just
much
wanted,
maxed out.
yeah, and this is at 407 FTEs, want to point out that we're not at that, we're at 389 right now.
And most of our guys are not at their max step. When it comes to firefighters, we have 30 new cadets that just graduated in January.
That's not added, right? Those are not added.
No, so we did everybody at their max number. So we did at the 3-year firefighter. We did the captain at their 3rd step, even though we promoted, 16?
So the
17
cadets are at a
captains.
firefighter's
Right,
pay.
but we're adding a brand new academy for new people coming up, I think it's September, right?
But it shouldn't push us over the FTEs,
It,
or if it does, it's gonna be very minimal.
well,
Because we're short on FTEs right now, 18, and we're still going with
we need
407.
to add perhaps 2 new stations.
Okay, well, then that would be.
That would be an additional
That's
cost if
something
we
we have
went
no
over the
control over.
407.
We-
But we projected 407, nobody in the
Well, no,
academy, everybody at their max.
Yeah,
Mhm.
because we've been projecting
Yeah.
those 2 stations for what, 15 years?
No, this is.
Yeah, no,
So-
yeah, so we kind of looked at what we have today, but we put everybody at their max step.
Right.
And we did use 407, we didn't use the current 389 on our service. And then all we did was we carried over that amount.
So one observation,
Yes, ma'am.
it's not 4.7 because it's cumulative. So it's 403 plus 120, 1.2.
Well,
Right, if you
we'll-
give us
we'll
1
show you
second,
that.
it's on the next slide.
We'll show you that math in our next slide.
Okay.
It's just when we look at the city's budget, whenever we have an increase, the city's budget only reflects that budget increase for that year, whatever it may be. We go back to 2018, it projected $621,000 the cost of that pay increase on that year. And every year after that, every year just shows that increase. And that's basically what we're showing.
If you
That
don't.
next year will cost 1.2 million.
Right.
So we add that to the next step of our salary budget goes up to 50,000.
That's why it is there, that compounding that you're talking about, it is there, it's in the salary budget. So whatever the 403, it was added to the next budget at the top salary budget, then it was the increase, then it was added to the salary budget, then it was the increase. So it is added there.
No, that's not, you did 48, the 403, it goes to 48, but the
Right, the 403 is
plus-
added to the
Right,
49,
but then it's,
and then it remains
Oh,
there in the
it
next
is.
number.
We have
It's
the
there.
math that you guys
But-
have used, but we
but to
wanted
be
to
clear,
see
it's in the
what
next slide also.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah, don't worry, we have both.
Yeah,
sides.
so I mean,
Both sides
this,
math
it is
is on the
basically,
table.
we took it how it's reflected on the city budget. And I
Every
mean,
year.
we've,
On an
Ms.
individual
Cabello, you
year.
know that you guys have gotten accolades for having a transparent budget and all this stuff. So we just went to your budget and we looked at how it's posted and we posted it that way, reflecting what we think is true numbers. A total of 4,792,240 for the life of the contract, going off our base pay increase. On the next slide, we do show the other math that has become very popular.
that's why we don't show the salary, the budget at the top anymore.
Yeah.
Because now it's reflected in the way y'all been doing it lately.
The compounding, and so we go ahead and we carry that, like you see, the 403, now in a full year becomes 1.2 million.
so may I explain that?
Yes, ma'am.
So that the public can hear this. It's not that, and you talk about accolades, it's that there's 2 different ways to bring, but in order for us to ensure that we're negotiating for 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it is, what is it gonna cost us in total? And it's compounding. Neither of them are incorrect. It's just what is our full impact for these next 4 years? And that's why we're saying it's $12 million, because for this contract negotiation, it's going to be $12 million impact if the numbers are correct.
Right, and we go
And we
into another
we
slide that's
understand
real
that.
important
I
on
mean, we
that.
might-
Yeah, but you're
we
kind of
might-
saying, well, it's because you did this way, so.
Well, it's just historically hadn't been done that way. You know, up until last contract negotiation, we had never seen the budget being done that way with us, or our numbers being displayed that way.
Yeah, for us, it's how much is it going to cost us with the needs next.
And I understand what you're saying, and that's why normally it's done with salaries, but I'm just saying, historically, throughout contract negotiation, we had never seen that before. That's why it's different
We've
now.
always accounted for it that way. We've always worked it out that way.
Okay, and to be fair, we wanted to compare apples to apples.
Just wanna speak
Orange
the
to
same
oranges.
language.
Yeah,
Sure,
sure.
so we have,
So
we have
did it.
both representation, so in the slide prior to this, the 4.7 million was gonna be the increase of the budget in 2020, the impact of the increase of the budget in 2026, right, correct? So that would be the impact, so now we did the compounded, which is the $12 million, right, in salary increases. So we're gonna compare it to the compounded projected city budget increases. So if you compound increases, you compound salary cost, right? Like, we want to do comparisons that are equal in value, in our opinion. So with the next slide, we got the growth of the city budget in the last 3 years, the net growth, and we divided it by we got the average out of that, sorry, and it gave us 32.5 million. From there, we took off 25%, you know, to be conservative, projections going forward, and we got that number of 24,375,000. So we did the same thing, we compounded that. So those are the same way of doing things. So our 12 million would be versus the $243,750,000, and which is
Our 12
roughly.
million would be an increase to the budget, the same as y'all's increase to the budget of revenue. So y'all will be bringing in more taxes, more bridge revenues and everything else on an average of 24 million once we reduced it.
Well,
I'm sorry, but doesn't this, and correct me if I'm wrong, doesn't this assume that the city is gonna sustain that growth over 5 years? Like, or for 4 years, forgive me. So that's a rather large assumption, for one. Secondly, how do you know that the city is gonna maintain that level of growth? I mean, it's a projection, right?
We don't know, that's why we use history to project going forward, right?
right, but there's so many other factors. You're trying to show something, but we'll come back to it.
I mean, it's okay, we were just,
No,
like I
no,
said, we're
that's
showing,
fine, that's
explaining
fine.
how
I appreciate that.
how the process came about, and
Okay.
that's it.
And I think that's why they didn't go with the average of the 32, they reduced it by 25% to show any potential, you know, things that might happen in the future. that might
The
not-
32 is from what budget, the consolidated budget or the general fund budget?
Consolidated budget, yes.
The consolidated budget, I mean, we're looking at utilities.
And I understand, I just want, that's why I
No,
want.
no, I'm just, that answers
Yeah,
consolidated budget.
It's,
Well, I mean, the general fund can be manipulated to go
But not
revenue or
but not
expenditures,
Consolidated, you're looking at
and that's why
solid
we looked
waste.
at that.
No, you can't do that.
What do you mean?
the consolidated budget is utilities, sewer, solid waste.
You're looking at the health and benefits fund, that it's only for health and benefits, for example. You're not comparing this, if you were to compare to general fund, we would have said yes. But if you're doing consolidated, you're doing it for example, environmental services. That's only restricted to stormwater. And so that's not something that we can say, hey, because of this.
Okay, I mean, we
increase-
can do a general
Yeah,
fund
that's
analysis as
right.
well
Yeah.
if you want.
You're better off doing it just general fund, because that's
Yes.
where the.
We can go over the general fund as well too. Next slide.
So our next slide is our ratio of city to firefighter pension contributions. And again, we take the same 12 cities that we've been talking about, and we analyzed their pension contributions from the firefighter, from the city. At the bottom of this slide, you also see the ratio. We have the second lowest ratio of 1.32 for every $1. Other cities have a 2 to 1, others have as high as 2.78 to 1. And here, the ones in gray are the cities, in the gray. The black bars represent the firefighter contributions. These cities that also have the red stack on them, on the top, these represent TMRS cities that these departments are part of. And what we did to their city's contribution is we added their social security benefit contributions. Now, here we didn't add the whole 6.9%. We reduced it to 5.45. And the reason for that is that we recognize that 1.45 of the social security contribution goes to Medicare, And that's something that City of Laredo also contributes on our behalf to our firefighters. So we went ahead and reduced these cities' contributions by that 145, and only showing that they're contributing 5.45 to their pension. And the reason we highlight this is because those cities that are part of that TMRS system, not only do those firefighters get a pension from the TMRS system, but they also qualify for a Social Security benefit going into age 62. They take an early retirement benefit, or they wait for their normal at 67. They do qualify for an extra pension. Whereas us that are in the Telefra fund, Irving's in the same boat as we are, in other cities, we don't qualify for that Social Security pension if we only work for the City of Laredo. And even if we have outside employment, we would have to be employed outside of the city for well over 20 years, actually up to 30 years, to really get the max benefit of a Social Security pension. So we don't get one unless we work at minimum above 20 years of service outside the city. But to really get the same pension as everybody else, we'd have to work 30 years outside our fire department jobs. And that's the reason we just show you what the comparison is from city to city. And you see that we are not out of step with what everybody else is getting, even though we are the second highest contributor to our pension.
Next slide.
And here, this is what we're asking from the city to contribute to our pension. We're asking for a 2.5 from the city for the life of the contract. And we break it down to the first 3 to be at 0.5% and the last year to be at 1%. Okay. And if the city would agree to this, then our ratio goes from 1.32 for every $1 from the firefighter. It would go up to 1.48, our ratio for every firefighter dollar. And keep in mind that this past year, our firefighters also did benefit reductions and agreed to give 1% more to our pension, bringing us up to 16%, like you saw in the previous slide. We got this 2.5 because our pension actual study showed that it would benefit the pension if we got 2.67 from the city, and that firefighters reduced their benefits and give 1% to the pension. The firefighters have agreed to do those cuts, which basically equates to about 5% in cuts when you add the 1% and the reduction in benefits that the firefighters agreed to do and got voted in already. So this is the total would be $1,130,000 and $684. And like I said, we did the math this way. On our next slide, we'll show the compounded cost of that pension contribution if the city agrees to it. And that contribution being compounded across the board becomes $2,653,751.
Next slide. So this next slide, city budget versus fire department budget. So in this slide, we got the total budgets from all these cities, we're missing Frisco. And we got the total fire department budgets, operational budgets, not just their salary budgets, but the whole operational budgets. And we basically got a ratio off of that. So just keep in mind, Fort Worth, Arlington are just fire-based departments. Austin, we did add the budget from their EMS services, so that's what they're at, 6.70. So these ratios basically affect the amount that they're invested compared to their total budget process.
So what are you saying here?
Then we're not any more of an impact on our budget than other fire departments in the state are into their budget.
Wait.
If you compare the total budget to our total fire department budgets, not just paid, but total fire department budgets, our percentage is 8.4. If you look at across the board, I mean, we're kind of like in the middle if you look at the rest of the departments. And then the 69 million for this year is including the $5 million in lump sum payouts that they did with a record number of 40 retirees that we had. So, I mean, realistically, it could be less in future years, right?
Is this
You're saying
just
that,
the
but I
general
don't agree
fund?
with it.
No, this is total budget,
Consolidated budget.
Okay.
total
The
consolidated,
821
yeah.
$821
As we mentioned earlier.
million is the consolidated budget for Laredo.
Yeah.
Which we used everybody's consolidated budget. We didn't
Right.
use just
Yeah, we're
ours.
gonna use one or the other.
But there might be some departments, some cities that don't have as many, more or less departments that we have. So I think in here, I think
Yeah, you
a
can't.
better reflection would be general funds versus the department, the fire
And
department.
then
Because they're all
And then there's
within
some,
the
and for example,
Yeah.
if you look at general fund, there's some, and I'm just thinking out loud, there's some departments, for example, that don't have city secretaries, or that don't have an animal care, right? And for us, animal care is like $3.6 million in our general fund, where other cities wouldn't have an animal care for $3.6 million, because it's not there. It's run by the county or individual, or separately, for example, like in Austin. So that side to me is not,
Well, the reason why we look at it is, if you're saying that in that city, the county pays for that, well, we don't have any control of how the city manages its funds and
Right.
what programs and what policies that they put in place. But other cities have to run their city just like we have to run our city, and we don't represent a disproportionate amount of the total
but that's
budget.
not what you're saying.
That's all we're trying to, that's all we're saying.
No, that's not what you said.
Yes.
You're basically saying that we're very comparable to everybody's cities as far as budget's concerned, and that's not the case. So we
Sure.
want the public to hear the same thing, that that is not the case. You're painting one picture right now, that is not accurate.
Okay, so if that's not accurate, you said other cities may have like animal.
Or they don't have that department at all.
That's what I'm saying, they
period.
may or may not. But those are all decisions made by the city,
But
by
you-
city management,
but you're
to how to run the
saying-
city,
But you're
correct?
saying that we're very comparable to other cities, and that is not the true case.
In just the one aspect of fire department,
Mm.
the total budget, that's it. We're not looking at every other aspect.
But what are you trying to accomplish by saying that, if that is not true?
In that one
I think what
aspect, it
we're
is
trying to-
true.
Well, it's because in like city council chambers, you always hear firemen are how much of the total budget? And no one ever corrects them and says they're just part of the general fund. They always say, when it was 720, now that it's $820 million, you know, that number's thrown out.
Are you
And
saying
I
this?
guess, let me answer that question, Mr. Gomez. I think that's, and I know I heard that, and we've discussed that a little bit. I think the issue here is that when we mention that in council is, fire department is a department of general fund. So that's why when we say 69 million of 242 million budget, it's a higher percentage. You're looking at it from the consolidated, which is 820, so you're saying it only represents 8.4 of the budget, city's budget, but it's a consolidated. When you look at general funds budget, which is 242, of course, it's a higher percentage. So I
Would it-
understand what I'm.
Yeah,
and
I'm
let
just
me
saying, would it be
know
fair to say that a city management can decide certain expenses could be part of the general fund and
No.
which ones cannot?
No.
Is it's true every city
No,
the same?
no.
And every city's
Well, that's what I'm
required to
saying.
provide
That's
those
what I'm
You
saying.
have to follow under general financial.
Every service is different for every city.
Okay, that
But,
was
but,
just my
but
question.
as an example, I'm saying, Mr. Lanis earns $100,000, and so does Mr. Chapa, right? $100,000, we're even. However, Mr. Lanis may have less expenses than Mr. Chapa, okay, and it's very different. He may have a debt, mortgage payment, and the other one doesn't. So that's what I'm saying, it shouldn't be comparable. Even if you both earn $100,000, it's not a comparable, because it's different in every household, every environment in general fund. So
And
that,
So
that particular.
Okay, may I-
The uncontrolled factor in this would be
The
the
uncontrolled.
management,
It
of
could
the
be,
city.
no, it could be
Or-
city council saying, I want these additional
or could be the
services.
Exactly.
different directions
Okay.
of the city.
But in your analogy, both of them making 100,000, if one had different life choices, whatever, forest, whatever,
He
I'm
had-
saying life choices, decisions
or-
made to have different expenses, chose a different and more
Or
expensive part.
mandatory,
What-
because maybe he has a medical that he has to have.
Exactly.
When someone else doesn't.
But in that analogy, those are still cities comparable in every way. It's just some cities may or may not, by choice, have some, or by mandatory, like
But
you
what are
said,
you
have
trying
choice.
to do with
I
that
think that-
slide, other than saying we're comparable, because we're not comparable? That is not a comparable comparison.
I think in that one aspect, we are. In that one aspect, that is just looking, if you just look at it from a paper standpoint,
It-
total
it's-
budget versus fire department.
It's a false comparison, it's to us and to the public.
Okay, that's fine. We're gonna disagree and we're at the table. We can disagree, you know? If we could just move on with our presentation, we'll keep going and then
I'm sorry.
we'll hold the rest of
And
the
I, and I,
budget.
and I want the record to reflect that in no way does anyone here believe that you're trying to misguide the public in your numbers. It's just, it's all about framing the issue, right? I don't want anyone to say that, you know?
Okay.
Well, I mean,
It's fine.
it's unfortunate, there is no exact apples to apples, right?
Exactly,
I mean,
Exactly.
I mean-
There's no Laredo in a parallel
Our
universe.
comparison is not false in any manner. It's comparing consolidated budget to our fire department salary budget. Our
Can I go
budget could be
back?
lower. Our budget could be lower.
that's
If
one
our
way to look at it.
department, if our department had newer vehicles and had less maintenance, for example, our
correcting
department, our
it. We're
budget could be
correcting it.
lower.
We're correcting
There's
it.
lots of things that could affect the budget.
And that's
I
fine,
agree with you.
we'll move on,
Yeah.
we'll move on. We disagree on it, and that's fine, we can disagree on things at this table, that's what it's
Yeah,
for.
some other
Have,
issue, yeah.
you know, good-
Okay.
Good conversation about it. So the next line is projected compounded cost of city budget. So we know the city likes to, say that whether we agree or not, they like to say, compounded cost. Like you said, there's no correct way to do it. This is the way the city does it, and we respect that. So we wanted to propose the cost in a compounded way, which equals to 15,034,500.
For your proposal.
Yes, for the proposal. And after this presentation, we'll actually have the article proposal to give to you, but I mean, all the numbers are here in the presentation.
So just, I have some follow-up questions, okay?
Of course.
So let's go to slide 11. Oh, forgive me, let's go to the chart with this comparable cities that you chose.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Is there a reason why, could you please explain why San Antonio wouldn't be here?
San Antonio, we couldn't compare, they're medics, they're at a higher rank. They use drivers on the ambulances, where we use firefighters mostly and assistant drivers. So that comparison kind of throws it off their salaries when you're trying to compare the medics. And another thing is their hours of work, they work 24/72 off. So they have an extra complete shift. We have 3 shifts, they have 4 shifts. So it's kind of hard to compare their time off with ours and their hours worked to ours. Their hours worked is much higher compared to ours.
So in,
No, sorry,
Much
they're
lower.
much lower than ours.
so in all of these, you're saying that all of the time
The
is,
24/70,
48
24/48 is the
It's
same.
the same.
so what about this? Because they just switched, based on their website, they're switching to a full
They're switching
40-hour
with-
work week. So it used to be where Lubbock had a Kelly shift, which is
Yes.
similar to what y'all had, plus you had the option of going a 40-hour shift.
Yes.
But then they raised the salaries based on your projections here, but it's no longer this 48, 24 on and 48 off. Now it's, you're a firefighter 24/7 or 40 hours a week. So,
Oh, so like the
Yeah.
PD schedule, like
So
where they,
something like
where they
that,
work
yes.
3 shifts a day.
something like that, yeah,
medics-
it's 40-hour
Does the
work week.
administration have
So
a
they
40-hour week as
have-
well?
I believe so, because
They're
everyone's
going
on the same
because they're-
40-hour work week.
Because they're, I think you're looking at the paramedic side, the UMC side.
This is just for fire pay. This
Yeah.
is just for fire pay.
No, but they use their medics, so they hire just medics, right? And they start them off, and then they hire their firefighters as well. But I know they're switching,
They are
and
switching.
that's what they're putting on their page. Yeah.
Yeah, so they are for, so I'm thinking that one right there is, I'm
That
not
would
saying,
actually-
it's questionable at this moment,
Okay.
based on this
I mean, we
information.
can get more research and,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
if
Okay.
you'd like to remove it from the list, we can go back, you can look at it, or.
That's fine.
As
tweak
far as
it.
like
May I
it being a
ask
true
some of
salary.
that, because I'm a stats guy, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I'm just curious, you have these outliers, but that can't be the entire range of comparables, right? There are other cities.
Oh, no, we have more than
Yeah,
that,
we have
but
more.
when we start looking, we still have more that are higher
I
salaries.
imagine so,
We
yeah.
have higher salaries than that, we have lower salaries than that. But when we're trying to compare services rendered, the comparison, the number of services rendered keeps getting reduced to where they're no longer comparing us to anybody else. Even this, I mean, if you look at services rendered and what we're capable of and what's being offered and being paid for in other cities is not the same thing.
Yeah, so we left some of our certifications off this list, and I can see, we kind of check off everything that is incentivized, or there's a certification for it, or there's some kind of ad pay for it. And we have them all, and like Brando said, now, starting 2019, we started making all our captains instructors and all our drivers instructors. So there's no ad pay for them, because they're not assigned to either EMS or fire training division, but we were all required to become fire instructors. So now we're all able to provide that CE to our lower ranks and provide that service. Whereas he compares to Plano, they're paid a lot higher than we are, but they only have 2 of the certifications we have, McKinney as well. And
And
most of these
another reason
cities
we wanted to choose these cities is under chapter 174, we just go back to that. We're not limited to a certain amount of cities, but we just try to get,
No, no, I hear
We
you.
like, our
also- we also
association
are the
wanted
11th largest
to
city.
try to get the best
And we
comparison.
took the top, the 12 that we found. If you want more, we'll bring more to you.
No, I was asking, 'cause
Yeah,
like, you
but
know,
that's why.
Yeah, Plano, Irving, McKinney, they're all around the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Some of them, yeah, some of them, no, but we have some.
Yeah, so I
McKinney, we-
didn't know, like, you know, did you look at some cities are kind of standing alone, like, look.
Yeah,
Loreto is,
we
you know,
have more cities like
Odessa.
Baytown's,
yeah.
standalone, Austin, we felt was a little lower, like, there's different cities that we did
And then
look
I-
at, and that's
I'm saying
fine.
that, you know, it could kind of skew towards,
Yeah,
you know,
these are
six
not,
hours.
these are not our.
It is a little skewed, and here's the reason why. So DF,
I mean, it could, I don't know. I don't
And
know.
really, we
So-
compare to the state of Texas, we're not comparing to.
the problem is when you reduce it to this amount of cities, it's easier for you to say that you're last place. Can you, so that's
But
the
look at
problem.
Corpus, and
When
we're
you
not
put
there.
it in terms of every single city that's either the same size or bigger than Laredo, then we're not in last place.
Okay, what place
That is
is
correct.
Laredo in population?
In population, we're 11th.
Okay,
11th.
there's 12 cities.
No,
So
there's,
how are we not comparing to?
there's 12 cities, but you have to understand, not every city, and going back to Ms. Cabello's point, you can't compare every city correctly, and that's hard for us because we're trying to find comparables. But when you look at the 12 cities that you do have, out of the 12 that you've given, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 cities that are in the DFW area. Now, if there's a reason why these are some of the highest paid, there's a reason. They have trouble in recruitment, y'all. They have a lot of trouble in recruitment
Dallas
because
sucks it all up.
Dallas sucks it all up, man. And these are smaller cities and again, they're having trouble with recruitment because they're really small and they surround a larger metropolitan area, but they're also, the cost of living is very high in most of these places.
And also.
Yes, of course.
Laredo's very high.
But also a lot of these services have mutual aid. I mean, you're talking about
Yeah.
Laredo being on an island. We don't depend on other departments to be able to come down and help us with
But
anything. right?
actually, the effect is reversed. Dallas, going back to 2018, has been losing firefighters to these outer cities. It's not the other way around. It's Dallas, city of Dallas losing them out.
So that's the bidding war.
Yeah, and they have this huge, because, and the reason they're leaving is because Dallas has a huge pension problem.
But look at this too. You got Plano, because I was thinking, okay, you know what? I don't agree with you on Georgetown, 67,000 in population, because you're comparing all these in this particular slide where you have all the X's. It's okay, fine, you know what? Let me go with Plano, because Plano's pretty comparable as far as our population. But you can't compare it, because if you're looking at our assessed valuation, and I'm getting it from Texas Municipal League, a survey, not for myself going in. Laredo's assessed valuation, if I look at it, net taxable value, $17.6 million. I look at Plano, $51.9 million. How can you compare what Plano can afford with a tax valuation, lower population than us, and assessed valuation, not double, not triple, maybe quadruple?
And
of
just
course-
to answer that question, the reason we can compare is because, again, chapter 174 allows us to compare it to any fire department that has similar
Right.
services.
So then use
And we
Corpus
tried, like I said, we attempted to look at comparable cities and services primarily, like I stated earlier, as being our, like,
Look at
main
Round
focus
Rock.
point, and
Hold on,
then we got
I
the
was
rest of
gonna,
the
I wanna
information.
make a point. Y'all have used a lot of these cities.
Well, because we always end up agreeing, and we always use the same index cities. You use none of our same index cities, like Corpus Christi, that's what we compare. Since the inception of time that we've been negotiating, we would negotiate cities with the fire department on who we would negotiate, what cities were comparable. These are none of them. And so you're going with cities that
Plano
are
was on
not
that,
comparable.
Plano was on those old lists.
Maybe Plano, other than that, we've never done McKinley, never done Corpus.
No, y'all
never
used
done Austin.
Arlington, y'all used Garland before.
We've always worked in the index.
Y'all have
cities
used
when we
them,
do.
y'all have used them for city managers' numbers, y'all have used them for PD's numbers. On PD's
When
old
we-
salary survey, y'all
when
had
we
Arlington and
agreed-
Garland, hold on, did y'all or did y'all not have Arlington and Garland in y'all's old PD salary surveys?
I don't remember.
Yes,
but-
you did.
Okay.
Okay,
Well,
that's
I-
it.
I
We'll
guess you
move
know
on,
more
we'll
than
move
I
on from
do,
that. No, we'll move on
Randall.
from that.
I guess you know
That's-
more than I
What was
do.
your, no, it's okay. Hey.
I think we're
What is,
going.
we're getting off topic here.
okay.
We
It's
can
okay.
pick at all the comparisons we got, and you guys can show us some, and we pick at them.
Right.
The statute of 174 allows us to look at other fire departments across the state, and we did just that. If you wanna fault the process or
No, that's
say
not,
that
we're
it
saying
is-
that it's
it is not following the law, then,
Yeah, no, we're not saying that.
okay,
No,
that's all we're saying. And
It's not apples to apples. It's
Yeah.
very
It's
difficult
very
to find a
difficult.
comparable
Yeah,
city.
yeah,
It is,
yeah.
but it's also, so just in the same token, y'all, and I'm not saying that this happened, but you all didn't put Corpus on there, and we want to see Corpus. Why? Because they get paid very little. That's why, okay?
Okay.
And it could throw off your numbers. Same thing with San Antonio. San Antonio makes a little less in certain areas, right?
It's a work schedule, right? They
yeah,
work less hours.
Exactly. Again, but you see what I'm saying? I give you those cities, you're gonna tell me, well, they're different this way. In the same token, you're gonna give us your cities and we're gonna say they're different in this way. Like for instance, Plano. I know Plano has, if I'm not mistaken, they're the highest paid firefighters in Texas, right?
And I think this is more of a.
This is just a city, the limited research that we
There's a
did.
misconception that Laredo firefighters are the highest paid firefighters in the state of Texas.
On the
right?
la-
We've heard it
In the last
multiple
meeting,
times.
in the last meeting,
In the
I
last
clarified it that you
And
were
that's
not.
fine.
But in the
Clarified.
previous
It's okay.
meetings,
Yes.
when we met before, you did mention that we were, right?
What-
Am I not
what-
correct?
one of
What
them.
meetings, what meetings?
Here.
Previous
Previous collective
He did
bargaining.
clarify it the
Yes.
following meeting, and it's okay.
Absolutely.
We just, like I said, want to show everybody here at the table, we are not the highest paid. We're not close, regardless of the cities that we choose, regardless, ABC, whatever
I
city it
disagree
is.
that when you're saying we're not close, because if we go to other cities, you are.
Well, I'm just saying, we're not close to being number one, as the things that are constantly said in the media, things that are constantly brought up as points of issue. Yeah, of
May
course.
I also say something here? So when we're doing salary surveys, and we're doing benefit salaries, when we're doing our risk management, we always compare ourselves to comparable cities to the city of Laredo. Corpus is always part of it, El Paso is always part of it, Brownsville is always part of it, Harlingen's always part of it, San Antonio's always part of it. We always compare most of our benefits and services to those cities that are comparable to the city of Laredo, just to see if we are engaging at the same amounts in all our benefits.
Okay, so you said San Antonio is comparable. San Antonio is over 1 million population. How is it comparable to
I
us?
am saying
They
that
don't
these are
work
the
our same
cities that we have
hours.
consistently
Okay.
used to compare benefits, holidays, salaries. We used it across risk management. We use it most of the time for all of our studies. That's what I'm saying. We've been very consistent in using these cities because they are considered the cities that are closest to Laredo.
Are those the
Closest
only
to the
cities?
services.
Sorry.
I'm
Are
sorry.
are those the only cities in that salary survey? Or,
Like I said,
Oh,
most of
okay.
the time, for the
I'm just asking.
benefits, it's not exclusive, but when we're looking at all those that I've just mentioned, those are the cities that we always go to.
okay.
We have our contacts there.
And
This
If
is
we're
what they
gonna go back to
want
one
hear.
174, and it doesn't say that we need
It
to,
said private sector, I got that.
no,
Yeah.
private sector is one part
Well,
of it.
and
We
y'all
didn't do
did
private.
that.
Hold on,
But-
hold on.
but-
We
Hold
could,
on.
but
One
that's-
private
I
sector
don't
is
think
one
we're
part of it. We
If you're-
didn't use that part. If you wanna compare local San Antonio, Brownsville, then we'll bring up private sector in this local area, and we'll destroy it. Y'all don't want us bringing private sector. There's a reason why y'all came up with a secondary employment policy. There's a reason why the fire chief doesn't want our guys leaving for 6 months. There's a reason, because the private sector here will destroy what y'all pay us.
No.
We don't wanna go down that road.
Operations,
So
And-
we,
and-
hold on, so we did not compare ourselves to just local state fire, we compared ourselves to state firefighters throughout the state. Because that's, we are state certified. We're not Laredo certified, we're state certified
Randall,
firefighters.
you're misleading the public again. The reason, and I know I've had first conversations with the chief, the reason we don't want someone out for 6 months is purely operational.
They had, when they were
Like
leaving,
how-
they had coverage. Guys were filling in the
With
spots. So-
overtime,
No,
right?
without.
No, not with
I think,
overtime.
okay, guys, time out.
Exchanges are not
If you look,
overtime.
we're getting off subject to what it is.
You are right
We have a presentation, we presented our information, you might dispute it, if you have, questions that
Yeah, he has some more questions.
have not been answered,
I just
or
have some
have
more
not
questions.
caused the
Yes.
back and forth.
I hear you, and I'm just having questions, so I guess my question is, do we know, so for Plano, there's 400 and, they have 404 FTEs?
Yes.
Okay, 404 FTEs, okay. So now, my second question is, did you get any sort of cost of living analysis for these cities as well?
No.
And the
No.
reason why I believe it's important is because it's like anything else, right? Like 100 grand here in Texas is a far cry better than 100 grand in California, right? Cost of living means everything, right? That's why people in California may make a little bit more, but at the end of the day, they have to pay more for rent, they have to pay for all these things. So I think cost of living analysis would help in terms of these comparables. And I know that as far as Plano is concerned, it's the third highest cost of living city in the state.
And we're
And this-
not,
yeah.
and to go to that point,
Mhm.
we're not asking to be paid like Plano. We're not asking to be paid
No.
we don't want to be number one.
Yeah.
We just want to keep this competitive wage at the pace that the rest of the state is growing.
And the reason
And
why,
that might be different in the pace, that they're outpacing us by a lot, and that's justified, like you
Yeah.
said, cost of living might be higher. But we're not asking for that, we're
And the only
not
reason
going
why-
that route.
Under 174, it doesn't ask us to look for comparable.
Well,
No.
and then
Living,
if,
right?
I do agree with what you're saying, that is a factor, but there's also other factors that come out of our check. Our insurance, for example. A lot of these departments are capped at $200, $250 on insurance per month. We're over $550 on insurance a month. So the amount of money that comes out of our pocket, 100% different. Then when you look at how much is taken out for pensions and things like that, we're comparable to all the other cities, you know?
Do we know-
So there's a lot, when you start talking about the dollar that, or how much your dollar will buy after your salary. But at the end of the day, we're not even asking to go to what Plano's get paid. A 2.5% raise increase doesn't get us to Plano. I don't even know why we're talking. If you took all of our incentives off, if you take everybody else's incentives off, it just left us with our full pay, we're below their base pay.
Do they have
We're
a
not-
percentage in ad fees?
Some do, yes.
Some
No,
do, some
Plano.
do. I
Plano.
don't know,
They
Plano.
don't. No, they do
But-
No, no.
Plano,
They do
no,
not.
very different.
Yeah, but
Okay,
even our
But you
incentives-
can't, hold on, but you cannot compare and look at that and say, we'll take off all their ad pays and we still won't equal to them. You're talking about our ad pays like they put us above everybody else. They don't get us close to everybody else.
and Mr. Manning, if
I
I
don't-
may, just to clarify what you're saying, or to just comment on what you're saying, you use 16% of the base, correct?
On
For firefighters.
the
For-
firefighter,
on the
on
firefighters.
captains, it's 20%.
On the firefighters, 20% for captains. But did this take into account overtime? And the reason why I'm bringing up the overtime is because when budget is paying out gross salaries for firefighters, the incentive pay, the percentage doesn't attach to your base. It attaches to everything after your base. So if there's overtime, and let's say in 1 year, let's just say you made $40,000 in overtime. Okay, so you take your base plus the 40,000, and then you attach an additional percentage to that. This chart that you have here, with all due respect, doesn't reflect that.
There's a reason why it doesn't
There is
reflect
$1
that. How
million,
do we-
I think,
There's
if I'm not
always
mistaken,
on-
is there
on
$1
the
million
city-
budgeted for overtime every year?
I mean, the
Is
city.
there-
For the
I don't
last-
know,
for
just
the last
question.
12, 15 years, it's
Okay.
always been $1 million budget for overtime. But it's always worth going over the $1 million overtime budget instead of fully staffing us at 407. So there's that savings in there. So even when you pay us on a certain day of the week, overtime 1 day, you still saved it because for that whole year, you didn't pay the salaries that were missing.
And the-
That is
the
correct.
17%.
And the
But-
21%
And the
for pension.
17%
But-
average that the city told us that more or less that's what they paid was including overtime.
But
in
these
the
habits-
calculation. Am I correct? Jesus?
Say it again?
And the 17% average,
The 17% is just the.
it's already
average.
including overtime.
The 17% is just the average of it.
Incentives with overtime.
Yeah.
No,
No.
no, that's the average that what percentage of it we take now.
So the last 3 years in a row, we've spent about $6.5 million just in incentives. Now, do we have anything from other cities, how much they paid in incentives every year? So that would be a better comparison is what I'm trying to say.
And I understand what you're saying.
Mhm.
I disagree with that comparison because we have no control over the overtime. When the city short staffs us 85 personnel that creates $4 million in overtime, we don't have
We
control
went
over
through
that.
COVID,
Hold on.
Randall. We went through
I thought we
COVID.
didn't want to talk about COVID. Weren't you
No.
the one that said no COVID?
No,
I'm just saying,
but
you brought that
said-
up.
You
You brought
said-
that up.
I-
If you
Again,
want to go COVID, we'll bring out
I
COVID
understand.
too.
We'll stop right there again.
I understand that overtime is something that happens because there is short staffing, but that's the past. Look where we're at now. You have a pension where you have, that's funded by your FTEs.
Yes,
Sure.
You have a shortage of FTEs now.
Yes.
Right? You had 30 retirees this last year. 40, Jesus, 40.
Yeah.
And I wasn't saying Jesus. Jesus. Yeah, it's not over. There's gonna be more people retiring because even you, Mr. Trappa, said that it's gonna be an issue. People are staying less time. So that's what I'm trying to say is, let's just forget about this fact, like Mr. Wynn said last time. Let's forget about that, who's the highest, who's the lowest, whatever. If you take out everything, if you look at every city, Corpus, San Antonio, your cities, you're at the market value. And the reason why we say market value is because that's what we did in the Siegel study with the city of Laredo. We looked at every position, what they were getting paid, and those that were below market value, were adjusted. So now the question is, because we
You
have
a
this
whole bunch of angry
overtime,
people.
I'm sorry?
Now you have a whole bunch of angry employees.
Yeah, and that's fine, and we're gonna deal with that, that's
And
beside the
that's what
point, sir.
174 addresses, that there's no
Yeah.
strife.
Yeah, and there's not, I'm not trying to
no lockout,
create
and
strife,
no lockout
and no
either.
lockout, and I'm not trying to call for strife, what I'm saying is that there is an issue, and it's the staffing. But guys, something has to give.
And
It's
that's why
15
we're
yeah.
proposing a 2.5 opposed to
Yes.
what other cities are getting
Yeah.
across the state of
E-
Texas,
Exactly,
right?
but the thing is, those cities can obviously afford that. The people at the table right now, budget director, deputy city manager are telling you, and I'm not saying that I'm not saying that they're saying this right now, but they may tell you, if you want this plus money for your pension, plus more FTEs to combat the shortage and to put, and so that you have more people put it into your pension, something has to give.
And just, and so last summer, when the city proposed their first proposal, I think it was calculated at 15 million.
It
And
was,
it was an error.
yes,
But that 15 million didn't strike this whole team as too much money. I'm just asking.
When the
It
first
was
I do not know.
presented,
And it's okay, and it's
presented.
okay that it's an error. We're not holding to,
It was
we're not holding
presented.
it against.
$5
And we were doing 5 years, yes, correct. And I'm not holding it to you, I'm just,
So it's, you
I'm
proposed
just saying.
12 on 4 years, we looked at 5 years, and it was, you had, whatever.
I guess let me clarify that for Oscar. We didn't present an offer of $15 million. We presented
Yes.
certain,
let him finish, it's okay. Jesus, you
we
can
didn't
finish.
present an offer of 15 million. We presented all the options that were there. The spreadsheet that had the calculation had the issue of the compounding on the very top, which was brought up here at the table, and we said, right. So we didn't say, okay, here's $15 million, let's offer that. We offered the individual proposals for their wages and all the other
Right.
items that we had in there. So that equated to an A number.
yes.
So
Yeah.
we didn't have a check, we didn't have a, you know, a.
No,
drawer
and I
with
understand
$15
that, yeah,
million.
you gave an offer, the
Right,
math you
now-
did,
Now, let me add to
Yeah.
that, because that was almost back then. You know, certain things have happened since then. We've
Okay.
had the Siegel study that we're gonna have an impact of $10 million, $1 million in general fund. We're working on certain other things, and I guess not to get too much into details, to not elaborate. Stuff has happened since then.
okay.
We don't have that same, you know, if we had a balance, because if we have a balance, it's not available yet.
I think when you made that offer, all these things were already coming down, you were already
And
budgeting for.
What
them
you're
as
bringing
well.
up, and it's fine, what you're bringing up is what negotiation is all about. Negotiating,
absolutely.
compromise,
Yeah, yeah,
you know,
Just a
trade,
point of
you know,
clarification,
bringing.
the FTEs, compared to the first staffing article we did, the current one does not call for an increase of, beyond 407.
That is correct, you were absolutely right about that.
Unfortunately there, and yet again, I know we mentioned fire stations, and I know Manny said we've done that for 10, 15 years. There's already studies in the engineering work for that, at least one of those stations. So
Yeah,
for sure,
but we're-
it's not a matter of another 10 years,
Well,
it's coming
yes,
down
but
the
we're
pipe.
not-
hold on,
and
hold on,
it's
hold
gonna
on.
be addressed this year.
and I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree we need new fire stations. I don't disagree we've had that tax base out there, for example, at the 13-mile mark, that has been unprotected in response time, nowhere near our normal response times in the city.
Don't say that.
Really? It's my
It is
station,
a-
it's my
it is a
station, my
far
district. I
larger
guarantee you the
response
response
time
times to the
due to
13-mile mark
You're
are
saying
not.
to the people listening to,
I'm saying the response times to the state, to the 13-mile marker where all the warehouse district is not the same as it is in town, even though they're
That
from the
is,
same
that
town.
is, it's not the same, of course it's not the same.
No, because there should have been a station built out there years ago. Land was already donated for that station years ago, and that's why I'm
And-
skeptical when y'all talk about new stations and new personnel that
And
are
that- and
coming
that's
up.
fine.
Because
And-
the land has
We
been
can
given.
go with what has been said in the past, what is gonna be said in the future.
You
Yeah,
know what?
Bow tie.
I get it, I get it.
Thank you, Oscar.
I understand.
And we understand, right?
Yeah.
There's been a new station on the map of the city for a while now.
It all
So-
comes down
It
to-
hasn't happened,
It all comes down.
for
to-
whatever reason, it hasn't happened, right?
So what is,
So-
what is your idea then?
My-
Let me ask you this.
And that, this is
Okay.
where I wanted to get.
Thank you. So my idea is like, look, the amount of, so the biggest thing right now, and one thing that isn't talked about in this presentation is what are, for the budgets for these fire departments in these cities,
Mhm.
what is the percentage that goes to wages versus operations? Because right now, 93% of the of the budgeted money from the city for the fire department, 93% just goes to wages.
Okay.
Okay, whoever's fault that is because of overtime, that's not the point. The point is, no, but that doesn't help us going forward, Mr. Manning. Like
To
you.
make it healthy, to make it-
healthy, to
But
make
if
it
you're
healthy.
gonna bring it up on our incentives, it is relevant who's causing the overtime. It
Yeah,
is relevant. And it's
it
also
is.
relevant the amount of money that's saved to the
is.
budget because the overtime was chosen over the FTEs.
I understand.
That money is relevant.
I understand it's relevant, sir, but the thing is, talking about things that happened in the past doesn't help us move forward. And what we're trying to do at this table is hopefully cure some of those deficiencies. You're saying that you need more people? Well, if we spend more money on wages, that means we have less money for operations. That means less money for FTEs.
Okay.
If we spend more money on your wages, it's less money for potentially contributing to your pension, which is, according to y'all, the biggest issue with this fire department is the health of this pension. Because this doesn't just affect the people at this table or the people at the stations. It affects the people that have already done their years of service for the Laredo Fire Department. So that is a big deal.
It affects the city as well.
And it affects the city as well. For sure it affects the city. That is a mutual goal a mutual priority that we should have here at the table,
The
okay?
reason that we're asking for more fire stations is because the city's growing, right? The tax base is
Exactly.
growing.
And that's why we need more money
You can't
for
ask us
operations.
Right, but you're taking
It's
that
to
money
ensure
and
that there's
you're
quality
increasing
services
tax
to our
revenues.
city.
You're making it
That's
sound
it.
like the choice is only this or this. As the city grows, your tax revenues grow. Do they not?
It
And
all
as they grow,
it
they
all
justify
sir,
inflation.
it depends on the growth. Now, okay, for instance, if Tesla came tomorrow and created this warehousing district in some part and their tax revenue was crazy, then yes, that would be awesome growth. But if it's a different type of growth that doesn't generate as much income, then that growth really doesn't account to what you think it's
What
going
type
to.
of growth would that be?
Yeah, what's the miles and miles of growth that doesn't generate tax revenue? That's,
I'm just saying, it all depends on the type of growth. It
I mean,
really
now,
does.
unless the city
Can you
gives
give us an
away
example?
future tax revenues
I'll
and
give you an
and
example,
things.
is that you grow, but, we still have high poverty in this town, right? So you
We
keep
really
growing, and you have a big population to manage, there's no resulting tax base. And I'm saying that that's a possibility. I would love for
Yeah, and-
300,000 houses to keep being built. I can't afford it.
And our
Can't keep up with the construction of the house.
Our,
That'd be
our,
great. I'm saying,
the
but-
market has expanded,
It could go back
and
and
the
forth.
city has expanded,
Yeah.
and we
So
wanna
we
make
wanna
sure
make
that
sure
the
that's-
safety of the community is also
absolutely.
expanded
Yeah.
by the qualities that we provide.
And
The services
both
that we
sides of the
provide.
table
But
agree with
and
you.
the other thing on that budget, and talking about operations, the operational budget's always been tiny. You're saying there's only 7% is operational. Well, I know Ms. Cabello did a study 4 or 5 years ago. She was a one-man crew, and she did a study, and she said, you guys run super lean. You're only 9% of, back then, of your budget. So the city, as it says, it grows and we become a bigger part of the general fund, it's claimed. I don't think we are, because it seems like you're taking away from operations to pay our salaries. There's no increase into our budget
I
to
agree.
pay for salaries, because we've gone from 9 and now you're saying it's 7. So what I see on my side is, it means you're taking away from operations to pay for salaries, and no money from the general fund is going in. Now, another thing with the general fund, it can be manipulated extremely well, because, and I'll explain to you during your budget talk, bridge revenue. The bridge revenue could only be 50%, right? We can only use 50% for other things, correct?
Please direct this to this man, the numbers guy. Because I'm just like.
The bridge, general fund, 50% only, right? But we use real conservative numbers. And then our numbers change because the tax base has increased, something's opened. The bridge revenue, the projections are always super conservative, and we always do better than our projections are with the bridge revenue. So then at some point in time, city council will say, oh, we can take out another 10 million and put it into some other fund. So the city does have room to grow, the general fund has room to grow, but we always start with super conservative numbers, right? When we started our budget and we said the budget's only 200 and something for the general fund. And it hasn't really changed much from like 199 to, what is it now, 230? 242.
It went up to
So-
a million last year. it
so, I
went up
mean,
6
it's-
million this year.
It's gone up, it's gone up
not go down
slowly.
This year, because a lot of the money that came in, 10 million from ARPA is going away.
Sure.
So,
But I mean, we've seen
It's been
growth, since
consistent
I've been
growth.
involved the last 12 years and I've studied the budget, we were below 200. Now we can say we're well over 200 in that budget. So that budget has room to grow. And then when we watch city council, we pay close attention, there's always money and said, you know what, we can take out more out of the rich revenue and we're not breaking our own city charter, our own ordinances, because we're not breaking the 50% barrier because our original projection was so small that 50% has room to grow. It's not what's projected at the beginning, and we play with this 242 now or whatever it is.
50% from the top of the revenues that are we elected to total.
Yeah.
Then we take more money after that, but some of that money goes to CIF, some of that money goes to administrative
Debt service.
fees that we charge.
And the
So,
service.
ambulance, so basically, we're leaving bridge, and which is another concern that I have, is that we're leaving bridge, our enterprise fund that is generating money, we're leaving them to work. And
And
Minimal.
guys, and
because
guys,
we also take money from bridge for their construction, because we need to maintain all their infrastructure, expansions and all of that.
We-
So
we're
at the end of the
working-
day, bridge ends up,
we're working on an expansion that's gonna be about $40 million for, well, no, more than that, 50
so
something.
there's,
Then we're not even looking at bridge 4,
Yeah.
5. And so there's other things.
Oh, yeah,
I
of
can
course,
tell you
of
the
course.
record, I mean, we're taking all we can from bridge, so.
Yeah, yeah, and that's all I'm
There's really
saying.
not too much more
Yeah.
room unless they generate more revenue. And
Sure.
if there's more revenue coming in, yes, we might be
Sure.
able to take it.
And I think we've gotten away from
Yeah,
the actual
Yeah.
subject.
yeah.
It's a good conversation.
It is,
And it is.
it
And
is.
it actually is.
Because I think that the concept, the idea here is that there's more money in general fund. The idea, I hear that it's growing, it is growing, but revenues grow and expenses are growing faster than the revenues. And I think that's a key point here is we have programs that we're trying to develop, the detox, the homeless, there's other, the fire stations in there, all of this required monies from general fund to get started. Not to build, because we get the monies to build them from bonds, which then in essence takes money away from operations because we have to pay the bonds. So it's a difficult job to balance because you have to pick what are your priorities. And that is the idea that the priorities is what goes first. And so we're
It's not
sacrificing
priorities,
things.
it's what are the requirements, what are the basic requirements first, it's not priorities. Because I don't want you all to think, fire department's not important, or is department, no, it's not that, it's what do we have, what are our obligations first? If whatever we contract with you, that's
That is
our
an
obligation,
obligation.
that's our
We
obligation.
understand.
Any and all contracts that we have out there have to be.
They're all obligations. We understand that. And that's what we're trying here at the table to, get a
So if we go back to 174 and we talk about what the comparable, compared cities in the state of Texas, we're the 11th largest city. What cities, obviously you want to compare to cities that are 150 miles away and not 200 miles away. What's your mile barrier? Like, how do you come up with only San Antonio, Corpus, or Brownsville and not? And the reason why I say is because in the old salary survey and PD salary survey, I've seen Arlington and Garland before, I've seen Plano before. So where my question is why? Because 174 says comparable in the state of Texas. Doesn't say
Yes.
comparable in 122 miles or 144 miles.
Yeah.
So why are we limiting only to these cities near us? Because we don't always limit.
No, and I'm not, sir. So I guess with one of your comparables, the ones that I would agree with, in terms, like for instance, I've always said it, I mean, because I went to school in Lubbock, it's pretty much the same, it's pretty much the same. It's, the population is the same. It's a hub city, right? There's nothing out in West Texas other than Lubbock and,
Okay.
Texas Tech. There's nothing in West Texas. So it's a similar thing. But you can say, look, they're different. They don't have a bridge. Completely fair, right? They don't have a bridge.
Not the largest
But-
inland port.
Not the largest inland port. You're right,
You
yeah.
can say they have an influx, Red Raiders are playing, something's going on.
Yeah, something
We have an
happens.
influx because of our trading. We
Exactly.
have influx.
I think our influx is way
So
more
Lubbock is a very good comparable in this list. My only ones that I would say, Yeah, that would be the only one.
So Arlington and Garlandon have been used for years, has no comparison.
So-
Even though population-wise, services rendered, square
Arlington,
miles.
Arlington is larger, but so looking at what they're making, a firefighter, let me just see this real quick, just comparing. Arlington, this is for just a firefighter. Base year 1, base year 3, 93,280, yeah, exactly. So
Yeah,
with that, yeah, it's exact
You
same
can
number.
verify all
I
the
just have
information
to
on there
verify.
if you want.
Now, with Arlington, like I said, my only issues with any of these cities in the DFW area is that when you have trouble recruiting firefighters, in order to do that, you have to raise salaries. You do. That's in anything. Like you can ask our HR
So
director.
you're saying that in Arlington, when they give their test, nobody shows up?
No. What I'm saying is that is there competition in that area for firefighters? And there is, because they have to compete with not only the city of Dallas, the city of Fort Worth, but every other, anyone that's part of the Dallas Metroplex area. So that's a problem. And then here in Laredo, we actually have how many applicants
Over
per?
1,000.
We had 1,036, over 500.
I mean, we could look into how many applicants they get too. I think it's something that we
Yeah,
could look
I mean,
into, if that's the,
So what
the
you're
big
saying is
concern, right?
that it's hard for them to find applicants to fill it because Dallas eats up all their applicants. I mean, we'll be more than happy to get that number.
Yeah, I mean,
How many people showed up for the last
Yeah,
test?
I would like to know that.
I mean,
But the-
Austin has
Yeah.
4,000, because they have 2 sessions for their testing, 2,000 in the morning, 2,000 in the afternoon.
But again, but what I'm trying to say is that you are saying that we should only compare Laredo to these. Comparable services. But there are other cities that have bigger budgets, that pay less than what you're making. And I'm not saying that's a bad
But if you
thing.
look at the services. that
Yeah,
they
I'm not
provide,
saying that's a bad
You have seen Laredo firefighters provide an array of services, you can see from the list, and there's no, I guess, comparing apples to apples, because at the end of the day,
There is no
even
other
though we're
Laredo.
only compensated for two.
Is that a correct statement?
I'll give you an
I guess that we
example.
all agree on.
Arlington, their budget's 614 million, ours is 821,
Correct.
but they pay their firefighters more.
Yes.
Plano, budget's under ours, but they pay their firefighters more. Irving, almost identical, we're a little under them, and they pay their firefighters more. I mean, we could go down the road.
I see the numbers.
Budgets.
No, and I see
I'm gonna show you
I see the
budgets.
numbers, but the thing is, none of us here at this table can say with any certainty the complexities of the budgets for these cities. None of us can, because think about it, and just as an example, just as an example, the detox center that we are trying to get here in Laredo, Texas. You know that we would be the first municipally run detox center in the state of Texas. That means that no other city is going to have to budget for this. And I know what the answer might be. Why have it? Why have it? Because there's a need here for that.
We have to go to Corpus or
I mean,
San
I would say
Antonio
there's a
to get
need
our
in all
families
cities.
health.
Yeah,
No,
there's
but they have those clinics.
They have those clinics ready to go. We don't have anything.
And that's a good example of how Laredo being isolated away from everybody else really reduces the services that we have. For example, help
Yeah.
mentally, help for drug problem, help for firefighting services,
Homelessness.
help for everything. I don't disagree. Laredo's an island. We're a long ways from everybody.
And the city invests a lot of money into these programs. And y'all's program, y'all's department, and this is in no way, it's not a comment on the importance of your department. It's a very important department, because the first person I call is 911 when I'm in trouble, and y'all show up, okay? But, go ahead, I'm sorry.
And I'm sure there's other services that other cities provide that Laredo doesn't provide, right? And we
Exactly.
can go and look at different examples of what we provide versus what they provide. But as far as what Mr. Manning is trying to point out is just that compared to budgets, all these other departments are paid better than us, and they have a smaller budget.
And we're
But
just
it-
trying to,
yeah.
we're not here to talk about all the other stuff going on in the city or other cities, which came to show a presentation.
No, there's one
With
side
information.
about comparison.
Yeah.
In comparisons to
That's
other
what it's
fire
for.
departments because we're just addressing fire department. Okay, I just don't want to get this conversation into, because we could talk about all kinds of services, compare all kinds of services all day long, costs and how we wish Laredo would grow, and it is growing, but you know, some people have different ideas of projected growth, and Mr. Esparza can say, you know, I project this amount of money is gonna grow every year, and then people, you know, council or city management will choose the direction they wanna grow, and we're just here not to make those decisions, because that's your job. That's your guys' job. We don't wanna have that job right now. All we're saying is here to negotiate, and if you guys feel this is an unfair offer, I mean, you can come back next session with another offer or a counter, and we can dice that up and, you know, go back and forth. We just, in hearing what you guys said, you know, the last couple meetings, we felt, looking at the rest of the state, that this was a fair offer. If you don't agree with us, I mean, that is on you. We just, like I said, wanted to show a presentation to, I guess, combat the rumors, the things that, you know, some people that lack all of the information, make assumptions that we are the highest paid, and we are this, and we're that, and we feel that that hinders our negotiations, our public relations, so we wanted to point out these cities that we found, and that's all we wanted to do. Whether you agree with the cities or not, that's besides the point. That's all the information we wanted to, because under, like, again, 140, 174, we can't do that, and that's the whole point of collective bargaining, correct?
And I appreciate it, and we're here in good faith, just like you are. Just at first glimpse, you know, just these compos, I get it, these comparable services, but you talk about other comparables, you know, just it's statistics, and at the end of the day, I think that's what we started off with. There's just no exact apples to apples, right? So I appreciate that you're not just coming here and saying, well, give me, you know, 10%, because that guy's getting 10%.
exactly.
And I appreciate that.
And you can see that
guys
by the
have-
math.
Yes,
We didn't,
I get that.
ours was
right.
the lowest one on
Yeah.
that, so.
And the same side, you know, we're not for profit, so it's not like we're saving money from you guys so we can, you know, pay shareholders, right? Which is a good thing, right? Where we just, all the money comes back to the city, and you guys deserve what you get. Our priorities, I believe, are shared, you know, the pension, the FTEs, the overall department budget, you know, to upgrade equipment and facilities and staff new stations. So that will come back. We appreciate what you've given us, and you can, you know, shoot for the moon. And we stipulated, we concede, you're not the highest paid. You're not just sitting here, you know.
You made a comment right now, shoot for the moon.
As far as your.
This request is shooting for the moon?
No, I'm saying it's
Oh,
not.
it's not shooting for the moon.
Yeah, we
I
think
appreciate that. I
it's
appreciate
a,
that.
we, in our opinion, that's a very fair offer.
We
in our
didn't,
opinion.
we don't have going like
We felt
way high, way
compromised
low,
about it.
you know, we're really trying to get to a contract. And I appreciate that. And again, we're gonna come back, not because we're trying to, you know, save money for our shareholders. We're just trying to be responsible and give you guys, you know, a fair deal. So really appreciate that.
Any other questions? And I know we could have the official articles, we just need to copy this and print them out.
That's okay,
And
that's fine.
if you know, I mean, all the information is on the presentations, but
Talking about the next meeting, next week, while we're on caucus, if y'all could talk, I think Wednesday or Thursday of next week, we're available if y'all are one of those days. So if y'all can look at y'all's schedule also.
Yes, sir, absolutely.
we'll have
All
a
right.
caucus and,
Yeah, so we'll caucus about 20 minutes?
yeah, 25 minutes.
25-minute caucus,
can go the
and
rest
we are adjourned, oh, and I forget, we're caucusing at 2:35 on March 31st. Thank you. All right, so we're back from caucus. It's 3:22, March 31st. Before caucus, we heard the proposal on Articles 15 and 30
Yes.
from the union. I know you've memorialized those proposals in the form of an article.
Here, I'll give you Article 30 first.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much.
These are 15.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, there's some passes down, buddy.
Yeah, already or no? Article 30? You guys already have them?
Do you have it, Modi? There you go.
Do y'all need another copy?
I think we're good. Mr.
Article
Chapa,
30?
thank you.
Okay.
Okay,
I'll start with Article 30. And Right now, we did a quick copy, so the numbers didn't copy over properly, and the table looks a little different than what's in the contract. But it's the same information. So basically, section 30.2, we're just changing those numbers to reflect our proposals that we did in the presentation and the dates, okay? So that we're requesting an additional 2.5 for all firefighter pay toward the Laredo Firefighters Retirement System, effective June of 2023, and then another 0.5 effective October 1st of 2023 for a total of 21.6, and an additional 0.5%, making that total contribution 22.10 effective October of 2024, and so forth on the additional 0.5%, making that contribution 22.6 effective October 1st of 2025. A 1% increase for a total of 23.6. And the next point in that article is 30.3. All we're proposing is on that last paragraph, or that paragraph that talks about our military buyback. Last year when we made those pension changes, the membership voted in that if you do want our military service credit to count toward your pension, that you do it in your first 5 years within date of hire. Instead of having our entire career and the guys buy it at the very end.
Yeah.
So we just want our
Harder to
pension.
calculate, right?
Well, not only calculate, but also be able to play with that money and let it grow in our fund instead of putting it in and basically taking it right back out at the end.
Indeed. So just one question on Article 30. I know that this was brought up at the table last negotiations. This idea of having, for the citizen participants on the board, having non-firefighter, I guess, affiliated people on the board. Is that something, I mean, I think that's something that the city would like to address possibly in a counter proposal. I looked at the Telefra Act. There doesn't seem to be an explicit prohibition on that. So just know that our counter proposal will include something like that.
Okay.
And that way the city can have, I guess, we can have citizen stakeholders that aren't affiliated with fire. That's what something the city wants, but that will be in a counter proposal. Just wanted to let you guys know, okay?
Okay.
Just out of curiosity, real quick, even historically, your mayor designee has been a firefighter because they're privy to the information at hand. These are non-paid positions. So my question is if it's a citizen of Laredo, who's going to show up and not get paid and do all the research and the travel and everything else to do this? Like, you're creating seats at the table that I don't even understand who you're gonna get to fill these positions. You see what I'm saying? Like,
It could be just a concerned citizen who wants to make sure that the pension is handled and certain decisions are made accordingly.
are there gonna
That's
be,
it.
in your proposal, will there be requirements for them? Like if they don't meet 2 meetings, if they don't show up to 2 meetings, they'll be off?
I think that would be your bylaws. That would be up to your bylaws.
Would they
I
be
think
voted in?
Yeah.
Who would be appointed?
all of that would be part of your bylaws. It would just be the 2 citizens have to have non-firefighter affiliation. So it can't be someone who is taking from the pension. It can't be someone who is the spouse who is getting a contribution from the pension. It's just so that
As employees, we have
How
citizens
far
serve
into
on.
that are you gonna go? Like, in other words, if they're cousins of firefighters, uncles of firefighters, brothers, sisters, like, how far are you gonna go not affiliated is my question.
That will figure out.
yeah, that is gonna be part of our proposal, Mr. Manning.
That's what I guess
Hey,
I'm
would
saying,
that
is
apply
that would
to
be in your
the-
proposal.
Would that apply to the city as well? Like not a city employee or?
Can I answer? And I think the idea is that they're not affiliated by either fire or city as well. So we don't want another city employee being appointed by the board as well. Now, to answer your question, Manny, the last mayor's appointee was Oscar Lopez, which is not a firefighter, who was appointed by the mayor.
Mhm.
He didn't get paid. He attended all the meetings. He brought in a wealth of knowledge.
He did.
He was an investor as well.
I
So he
agree.
did bring in a lot. He didn't miss. I mean, it was very rare.
I agree. I think he did a great job. I thought Oscar was
And
great.
that's the kind of things that I think we want to bring into the board, is have another perspective, because right now it's all you
But
know,
prior to that, it wasn't, it was somebody that was affiliated.
right, and then it depends how far back,
Well, I mean,
go
one-
back
one-
10 years.
Well, before that,
And before that, we used to have, remember, Salazar Patas, I don't know if he wasn't appointed.
no, that was a citizen.
It was a
He
citizen,
took over, Poncho took over for him.
right, but he wasn't appointed, he was appointed by the board.
By the board, yes,
Yeah, so
but
we
I'm
had-
saying he wasn't the mayor's designee. That was
No,
my,
I understand, but going back to that, there have been people in the board that have been appointed that were citizens. Either
yes.
from a banking, financial, or some other, expertise that we're bringing to them.
Okay.
So does any decision
that?
that is made by the board affect retirees? Like if there's a retired firefighter
I mean, if
on the board, if that's the example you're using, is there benefit changes that affect him? Is there? Because historically, I don't think there's ever, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm pretty new in the department
I want to
considering.
make sure I understand the question correctly. That's all.
Can someone on the board, that you're saying that there's retirees on the board, right? Can they change their own benefit while on the board after they retire?
I don't know. They would have the board.
They would need a
have to
vote.
make change.
But the policy, you know.
So we hardly
so-
ever go back and change benefits that employees are already, retirees already receiving.
Yeah, no, so-
We don't, that's not our.
So
Yeah,
they- so they would have
so
no
a cost of
benefit.
living adjustment hasn't happened in over 10 years. There was one once, and it was a $200 adjustment for them. But the board alone unilaterally cannot act. In our pension bylaws, we'll call them bylaws. We have a three-legged stool where it's the actuary, the board, it's reasonable, it's not gonna affect, it's not gonna increase any liability to us in order for that to happen. So I really don't see any of those ever happening anytime soon. But yes,
And I think the board.
yeah, sure.
I think the board makes decisions that is affecting stakeholders, because the monies that we're using to contribute to the pension from the city's behalf is coming from the property taxes, sales tax. So there's part of the stakeholder that has part to do with that. And that's why I think the Telefer board, when they decide the board composition, is set up in a certain way. Not that they're trying to prohibit anybody from being on the board, but there at least is, what we're trying to do is have some representation from the stakeholder in that way.
Well, and there is, if you look at our stakeholders as being taxpayers.
There's always, the decisions are always gonna be one-sided.
Or influence of this.
yes,
Yeah, or
So let me
it's-
ask you,
There might be in a.
Are you seeing
perceptive.
non-fiscally responsible decisions made on the board? Is that what you're alluding to?
I'm not gonna answer that question, I mean, that's not what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is we want a better board to make better decisions for the board. I'm not saying that there's somebody in there that shouldn't be in there.
Oh, I didn't say that.
I've worked very well with it, you're asking me that question.
I know, no, I'm asking you the question, like, if y'all are proposing it, it's
To make an improvement, to make it
to make
better.
an improvement.
To have some
Diversify
representation from the
perspectives.
you saw the
stakeholder.
improvement when the mayors, when Oscar was on the board.
That's saying that one
Okay.
person made.
We're gonna get
improvements.
off topic.
We're gonna get off topic,
We're gonna get off
yeah,
topic.
you know,
Okay.
because this is
Yeah.
like a whole.
Yeah,
We're just giving you a heads up
Yeah.
of our
Yeah.
proposals coming up.
now, I was
Yeah, I
gonna
mean-
ask, I guess, because you guys are attorneys. The Telefer Fund says 2 citizens of Texas. How does, I guess, this contract, putting something in there that, I guess, restricts who's on the board, how does that whole thing affect?
The restriction is fine as long as you are meeting the statute. The statute body itself wants to put in that additional, I guess, caveat, then it may do so. I don't think that you are violating the statute by putting in an additional hurdle to being appointed at that board.
So
But that
contradicted.
provision,
Long as you don't
would
contradict it.
be in the pension bylaws. It wouldn't
Correct.
necessarily be correct to put it in the CBA.
I think the provision.
I'm
is-
asking what the city's
Tell you where the language is going to be, whether we find it that it's appropriate in the CBA or whether it be something that we would ask your pension board to do as part of their like rules and regulations.
And I think, Joaquin, the question is the additional monies are gonna be included tied into those conditions? Because that's the guess what we're trying to say is, here is an additional money with these caveats.
Exactly.
Yeah, because we already have, I guess, a
So-
caveat,
so-
because
It's
Like, you're not saying that there's no, that, you're not saying that
Negotiations.
there's not money available, it sounds like, if you let us stack a board in your favor, then it's okay. And if you don't, then there's not gonna be any negotiation.
It's hardly-
we're far from stacking the board.
It's hardly stacked.
Your legal opinion on the matter
Yes.
is,
Yeah.
because you guys,
Yeah.
I'm not an attorney.
No,
I'm
and that's
asking-
fine, but these are very valid questions that you have, and I guess we'll do some more research on the matter.
Because here, we're just addressing the collective bargaining agreement,
Correct.
correct? Right?
Right.
Like, we're not bringing up. Association, I don't.
I mean,
Have
earlier
no
I
control on the
said,
pension board, that would be a membership decision, correct?
Question, aren't there 3 members of the board here?
Yes, but
That's-
at the moment, I'm here as an association.
Right, but there's 3 members.
Jesus, at the
Or
moment,
you,
is
one,
here representing the
Oh,
city,
you mean
not the
Jesus.
pension board.
Jesus.
3?
The pension board is not at this meeting. The people at this meeting are
But there's
representing the
3.
association.
But there's 3
I
individuals.
think
here
which
for-
is, yeah, I mean, I feel like I represent the city, but I also, I have a responsibility and I know that I did to the pension. So I have to wear both hats. So.
I feel like
I
I
mean,
take
that's
off. Would be asking just for the pension, like, that would be my one-sided conversation, but I'm not here. I'm here as an association where.
To answer your
Here for the
question,
members.
it would have to be. It'd have to be legally binding.
Okay.
if that increase is ever happening in the future, because we've already put language into our bylaws. For any benefit increase, we would only consider 14% of our money going in. So we wouldn't, even if 14% of our
Who
contribution,
changes the bylaws? Who can change the bylaws?
the three-legged stool.
Yeah.
So it's the actuary has to approve it, the
The
board.
bylaws.
Yes, yes, that booklet is only changed now, we put that into it, that it has to be, the actuary has to study it and approve it, and then the membership has to vote on it, and just the board
So it
accepts
won't
it,
repeat itself. Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, we put in protection in
We
there.
understand your concern.
2017. In 2017, we did that change.
We know that you've been working hard on making the pension better. We applaud your efforts. We're still not there yet, but we'll figure it out, okay? All right. We done with Article 30, Mr. Chapa?
Yes,
Article 15? So just, so I guess, I mean, we don't have to go over this. You've already pretty much talked about it in your
Sure.
presentation. We appreciate it being memorialized. So I guess what we'll do is, now, so next week, I think that's too, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I think that's a little too fast of a turnaround. We need to cost out a proposal based on what you've given us. We're gonna check your number. It's gonna take a lot of work, and the one who handles this is the man himself, our budget director, Mr. Jesus. So, you know, he has a lot of other things, but he's getting to this. He's making it a priority. It's just, it takes a little while. So, we're gonna need, maybe not next week, but the week after. Is that possible? That would be, should have my calendar out.
We could,
We can go back and forth,
the
we can go back and forth and coordinate dates.
Yeah,
later
absolutely.
on.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be,
yeah, we can do it now.
Yeah, do it now. I mean,
yeah, we gotta,
Or you wanna keep in contact with Dale also, so.
You want to copy?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So
That's right.
You can actually set the date with him.
okay.
Uh,
That one.
We can tentatively agree something. here,
Because the
but-
following
Yeah.
is Monday.
Yeah, we,
12, 13, or
12 and the 13th, let's shoot for either one of those days, or if we have availability, maybe both. But
what availability do you
Maybe-
guys have for that week?
It's
Both
hard for 2
afternoons?
days for me.
It's our-
how about afternoons?
Okay,
And then
so the
I have
14th.
the
No,
eve.
the whole day was fine,
the
or 2
14 here too.
afternoons, either 2
Two
afternoons.
afternoons?
You know, that would work,
Yeah.
not the whole day.
Yeah, that way it gives you
12,
time to
14.
take care of.
Afternoon or 14.
The 12 or 14.
Or both?
12?
Afternoon?
Well, in case we have things to cost out or whatever, then the 14th.
That'd be
Let's
fine.
do 12.
Yeah.
It's the 13th that we have
Well,
court in the morning.
David, we'll get with David to send
Yeah.
you confirmation for those dates, but
Mhm.
tentatively 12 and 14.
Okay, awesome. All right. And just so you know, we are gonna be coming back to Article 15. And
16.
we are going to bring back something with Article 16 as well. And it's gonna be a package deal in that regard, okay?
You say package deals, same thing as the pension you're
Yeah,
referencing?
it's
Like,
all-
you have to take it one, or you can't take
No,
pieces of it? or-
No, it's not
Bring
that.
the two together.
Okay.
It's a package proposal with
Okay.
everything.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay?
And it's negotiation, I mean, you
Yeah.
can break it up, we're not here to play gotcha.
Nah, not at
I
all.
would just
Not at all.
bring it
There's
up.
no
to-
strong arm, you know.
No, no,
That's
no,
gonna be
no.
the case.
Get to the horses.
But we just want to give you a heads up, you know, because
Yeah.
that pays
No.
on the table, that's something.
Possibly back-to-back meetings, both days, are we gonna have any other articles?
The last time that we had this meeting and we had articles to propose, I sent them ahead of time to David, and I know he gave them to all of y'all. So it's gonna be more of the same of that.
Yeah, we all prepared.
I think we're good.
Well,
I know last meeting, Ms. Teniente wasn't here, but we were discussing what
Insurance.
information she might have gotten back as far as
Oh, yeah,
coverage.
email it to you.
So I also did some research on the workman's comp issue. So the issue there, there is no jurisdictional restriction, there's no geographic restriction. It's just what you're doing within the course and scope of your duties. That's all it is. Now, so course and scope is essentially, I mean, I had some information that I looked up. I promised to bring it back next meeting, but to answer the question that was proposed at last time at the table, there is no jurisdiction restriction based on workman's comp. It's all, this is what you're doing in the course and scope of your job, and I'll do a better presentation of that, and I'll work in conjunction with Linda
Yeah,
on
we
that.
have a statement.
Okay, so
want to send it to David?
and we can send
to
it prior,
it being
absolutely.
more-
Yeah, that seems to be the better practice, I think.
Workman's comp defines scope.
Mhm.
It's their definition of scope we're talking about, right?
So so if there's a disagreement as to what that course and scope is, then you have guys like Zone that fight for you and they get you paid. It goes to court, man. That's just how it works. And I'm sorry, but every insurance company, they're gonna do whatever they can not to pay. Like, that's just how it is. It's
And that's
par
our
for the
concern,
course.
that's why
The answer is, it's
our-
generally employer driven as far as course and scope. Yeah. So the insurance company's not gonna tell the city what is course and scope for one department versus the other. But, yeah, they're gonna be bound by that, and they're gonna try and hold, you to that.
So trying to do is to say, it shouldn't be up to the employee to have to fight that, right? That was the discussion, is if we're doing what an officer, I think y'all had referred to, if an officer gives you an order and you get hurt, over the county line or whatever that was, then you'd be covered.
Yes, sir.
Right. And it sounds real straightforward here, and that's the city can agree that if workman's comp denies, and if you work in your scope, that the city would cover you. Not that you have to go get an attorney and hire an attorney. That was what the point was.
No, I get it. And I guess we'll talk about that at our next team meeting, and we'll see what can be done about that to address your concerns.
Maybe you can workshop it on your side too. It's just a tough ask, because like,
Yeah.
what if you have
Yeah, no,
that's a crazy example, it's a road captain that gives a terrible order, right?
sure.
That may not represent what the city or the course of scope is.
Know any better. He's young. He doesn't know, and that was the whole point of the statement. Well, if you're doing what your officer tells you, like, no, that doesn't cover us. I wish it did, but just like he said, well, what if it's a crazy order? Like, well, when you have orders, you don't get to decide which ones are crazy and which ones aren't.
Yeah, I get
It
that.
becomes like doing bad stuff, It's unfortunate, code of ethics and code of conduct for the military,
I don't think that we would be breaking code of ethics. I think it
Code
would
of
be, you're
conduct.
going, or code of conduct. I
Yeah.
don't think that's what we're talking about. I
I
think
hear
it's
you.
going out of jurisdiction,
agree.
going and
Yeah.
doing something that everybody thought would be covered, it's not covered.
I'm just saying that it can't just be a blanket. And maybe we can workship it
Sure.
and say there's terms, but in the military, before I went to the desert, they said, hey, these are lawful orders, watch out for these, and it wasn't just, hey, just, make sure. Lawful course and scope order.
Sure.
And your
I
officers,
think that that's a great,
and your
if we
officers
could
can get
find-
training on that, like,
Yeah.
these are things that you can and cannot order of your subordinates.
sure.
So maybe we can define course and scope for a firefighter, for instance, and then we get training to, y'all know, hey, I can follow these orders, I shouldn't be following orders on, how to go walk someone's dog or something like that,
Sure,
go
I
someone's
agree.
yard, that's
I
not
think
cool.
I
Yeah.
would love to have,
Yeah.
that'd be great.
All right, anything else, guys?
You wanna do?
Just in summary, you guys have proposals for Article 15 and 30, you got the presentation. Again, we think that's a fair offer. Any other questions? You guys can go ahead and call David after the meeting, and if you guys have any other issues, let us know.
Yes, sir. Thank you for your time. All right, so we'll adjourn to 3:45. 3:44, thank you.